we started, Chuck, with looking at the 5 themes of slavery and how they all interconnect, and how this would apply to any enslaved person. But then probably, I guess it would have been early November, we then focused on Pero, and we thought, because there was so much information, not just about Pero, but Phyllis as well, that we would keep the two of them together and tell their story together.
Okay.
So when we placed the witness stones, and I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at the website for witness stones, but they'll get it'll be like a little placard, probably about a 4x4 size, a bronze placard, and it will have a concrete backing on it. And it's going to, we ordered 2, one for Pero, one for Phyllis.
Okay.
And we are going to place them at the First Congregational Church of Stonington, where Phyllis was a member, but Pero joined her periodically as well.
Have you seen their daughter's tombstone? There's a picture of her tombstone, Fanny Hallam.
No.
I have to look on my...
Fanny Hallam?
Yes. I believe I have a picture of her tombstone.
Okay. Do you know where she's buried?
In Stonington.
In Stonington?
Let me look on my Ancestry and see if I can see it. Yeah, but she's buried right in Stonington.
And so this year's project, I have to say, is probably our most complex. This is our 3rd year that we've done this project.
Okay.
And what's made this year a little bit more complex is because, number one, we're doing 2 people, Pero and Phyllis. And also, 2, between the 2 of them, they had 3 enslavers that we know of. And that's our Stonington connection. So we do know that with Phyllis, she, as far as the Stonington connection go, just the Brown family, that was all the information we were provided. If she had any other ownership prior to that, we weren't made aware of that. And then we have the Noyes family and the Hallam family for Pero. So essentially, we've been researching 5 families. So we do have a lot of information, but like I mentioned to you, some of it is still kind of spotty. So that's where it would be great if you have any other information to fill in the blanks with. But I just shared with the kids a few minutes ago the questions that I sent you, and we can even just start with the basic one of, how did you come across Pero? Where did that all kind of begin?
Just doing my genealogy on Ancestry.com. I just followed the paper trail. And that was along my maternal great-grandmother's lineage. And I knew no family member knew any of this stuff. I just discovered it on Ancestry.
Okay. So remind us again, what generation descendant are you of Pero's?
Pero would be my 5th great-grandfather. Pero and Phyllis Brown, they would have been my 5th great-grandparents.
Holy smokes. Okay. That's so cool. All right. So then I guess that's going to be what I would ask you next, because what we've taken a look at is how difficult it is for African-American people to use sites like Ancestry or any of those types of sites, because with slavery,
the brick wall of slavery.
Families,
I was fortunate.
Yeah, you really were. So did you just kind of leap upon Pero, or how were you able to fill in the blanks between you and Pero?
Well, doing genealogy, you follow the paper trails, you follow the censuses and additional paperwork like marriage certificates, stuff like that. And fortunately, there were people who participated in the censuses. So I was able to have that direct paper trail. Everybody doesn't have that luck, And I have what they call free people of color ancestry. A lot of Black people will they come to 1865 and they don't have the records because of, they're not on the they're not on the censuses. So I was fortunate in that way. Every family doesn't have that ancestry, so they don't all, have that luck. I've had a couple of lines of free people of color of ancestry, so I was able to go beyond the Civil War, where that is
You were.
that's the brick wall. Some people, 1865, they don't have any other information beyond that. So I was
Yeah,
very
that,
fortunate. And you don't know this unless you do your genealogy, because you would assume, of being of African American ancestry, that you would hit that brick wall. You don't know unless you do the ancestry.
that's fantastic. Yeah, because it does seem to be a common issue for people who
Mm-hmm.
are African American, but
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to see that. We had taken a look at Priscilla, who Priscilla was an enslaved woman, and to date, what they are saying is that she is the only enslaved woman whose ancestry can be traced from her leaving Bunce Island
Mm-hmm.
off the coast of West Africa all
All the
the
way
way
to.
to now.
Uh-huh.
And it was only because her first owners took such meticulous inventory
Sorry. Oh, they're
records.
okay.
And yep, so it was their inventory records,
Okay.
and they continued. They I believe they were cotton plantation owners,
Okay.
and they continued to just keep that genealogy. So even in the 21st century,
Mm-hmm.
they were able to go from
Beyond. Okay.
tip to toe.
And
So
that's what some
that
people
is
do. Some people have to look into the records of the slave owners to see, to maybe guess who their ancestor may have been. I've seen that done too.
all right. So let me ask you this question, Chuck, too. Why do you think it's important for enslaved people's stories to be told, even if it's been hundreds of years later? Like, why would my eighth graders need to care? And also, too, they're 13 years old, and I know right now they're kind of hitting their saturation point with this. But as the teacher,
Uh,
I know that what they're doing is so
Important.
huge, and I don't think they're going to understand that
Until they get
until
older.
they're adults.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, can you tell them why this is such, if you do believe that it is such an important use of their time, why that is the case?
Because it's our history. It's American history. And if you're really into the genetic genealogy, we're related. We may act like we're not related, but despite the differences of appearance and all that, Americans are very interrelated. Our DNA is showing it. So, it's American history. Avoiding it is not going to make it go away. It's history, and we should teach it. If we taught American history honestly, I think we'd be better off, We'd show the interconnection that we all have, And again, it shows in our DNA. If you're into the DNA, you see your matches. You see the people you're related to. And that's all the history coming together.
Absolutely. So I had also jotted down for you too. Is there something that you learned about Pero or Phyllis? And one of the things I'll let all of you know is that Chuck has taken me down some pretty profound rabbit holes. He sent me a lot of great information. Some of it was duplicated with what we already have, which was super helpful too, because that's called corroboration, when we're seeing things from two sets of eyes. So that just increases the validity of it. So that way we know it to be more true than likely not.
Did
And
you
Chuck
use
was
the book
telling-
called Tapestry? A tapestry of
Yeah.
of something of a Connecticut family, of an
Yes.
African American Connecticut family? Okay.
Yep. Yep. I have it saved, the PDF for it.
Okay.
And then we also use Black Roots a
Okay.
lot as well too.
Okay.
So we did use both of those, and they were really huge
Okay.
resources.
Okay.
But then certainly a lot of it just came from, we have got an incredible, she is the director of the Stonington Historical Society at the Woolworth Library.
Okay.
And I always, I always email her by, here I am again, your job security. And by asking her just even seemingly, benign questions, it ended up opening other avenues.
Okay.
Like we ended up from the Black Roots book, there was one of Pero and Phyllis's daughters. It was their firstborn daughter, and she was just listed as DAU.
Okay.
And then that same daughter was also listed in a story on the next page where it talks about her moving to Boston, and it just says, space, Hallam, daughter of Pero and Phyllis, moved to Boston with a barber. They didn't give the barber's name.
Okay.
And then that barber traveled to St. Petersburg.
Okay, I've read that. St. Petersburg, Russia, right? Yeah.
Yes,
Interesting.
yeah. And so I reached out to our town historian. I'm like, that's really weird to me that they would have every single kid's name listed, their birth dates listed, but yet their firstborn, they didn't have anything. Yet they also had this fascinating story attached. So I reached out to her and she's like, oh, I know what the daughter's name is. And I'm like, will you tell me? And her name is Prudence.
Okay, yeah, I saw that name before, yes.
Yeah. And then she also shared that her husband, the barber, was named Claude Gabriel.
Okay.
So, and what was kind of interesting about it was that it was because, as you said, we might look different, but, that also kind of brings people together. It was the Tsar of St. Petersburg who was just so taken aback by what Claude looked like, being the first African person who he had seen. He was like, I want to hire you as my personal servant. Would you move to St. Petersburg? And Claude said, I would if my wife agrees. So he reached out to Prudence. Prudence moved to St. Petersburg. And then we have the letter that Prudence wrote to Phyllis, her mother, as she was getting ready to board the ship to go to St. Petersburg.
Wow.
And
I'd like you to send that to me if you can.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, I would. And it was a very short letter, but it really just talked about the fact that I'm getting ready to leave tomorrow to go to St. Petersburg. I just want to express my love to you and also let you know that I feel privileged to be your child and to be raised as a good Christian, which is something that we've been focusing on with their story. But yeah, it's very short, but I will absolutely send that to you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And then the other thing that we learned too, just again from our historian, is that Pero purchased his own house. After he was emancipated in 1801, he purchased a house from a free Negro man, a parcel of land with a dwelling house on Flanders Road, which all of our kids are very aware of where that's located, on July 28th of 1802.
Okay.
So that information we weren't aware of at first. We thought that he only ever lived, once he became a Hallam, that he only ever lived on that quarter-acre parcel that Mr. Hallam had given him and built the dwelling on. But apparently he had bought a house.
Okay.
But one of the things that I wanted to ask you too, because this is what we were grappling with as we were building the script for our video, is that Pero and Phyllis didn't have a very happy life. I mean, Pero is going to be emancipated at 76 years old. He promises Prudence, not his daughter, but his enslaver, that he is capable of taking care of himself and that they can absolve any, ownership. And then Pero has to go to work. And we do have those work records that show him working with Mintus Palmer on a stone wall for 6 days. So he's 76 years old doing hard labor.
Still working.
But then we get tapped out. We don't have anything else to really show what he did. We know that he dies at about the age of 100, but he dies in severe debt, to the point where they have an overseer who's basically working with him on his finances. And we see Phyllis being sent to the almshouse or the poor farm because no one is able to take care of her. So my question to you is, how do you think that we have some ideas? We wanted to focus on faith, family, and their strong work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything else that you would want to see them putting into their video, so that way, as much as we possibly can, we can hit upon as many positive
Mm-hmm.
contributions?
Well, I think you pretty much have it covered. You're talking about what you have found out about them. So I think you
Okay.
guys are doing a good job. I don't
All
think there's
right.
really anything that I could add on to it. I mean, I think you're doing a good job.
Okay. Ooh, well, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, it's tough with,
Mm-hmm.
each year, each of our enslaved people, their stories are different.
Uh-huh.
And our first person, Cato Cuff, he was able to,
Mm-hmm.
we have war records because he fought in the Revolutionary War.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and we know that he was emancipated after he came back from the war, so he was much younger.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we know that Phyllis and Pero were on the way older side.
Yeah.
And so even their freed years were
Well,
not filled
with joy.
with joy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to try to, insert those pockets of joy where we can.
Mm-hmm. Well, they had a large family. I guess that was a joy,
Yep.
in itself. And their children did go on to do other things. They didn't stay in Stonington. They traveled. For example, his daughter ended up in St. Petersburg, Russia. So,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
so
Do you happen to know any sort of evidence that would indicate what types of work that Phyllis and Pero would have done as they were enslaved?
No, I would just assume, they were in Connecticut. Northern slavery was different than the Southern slavery, so they may have been hired out to do different, domestic work and, routine jobs for people. They didn't work like plantation slavery like in the South, so they were hired out to maybe even paint a house, help build a house, and different type of
Right.
work like that.
And we do know that the Hallam and the Brown family
Mm-hmm.
were very involved with the maritime industry, with boating.
So they might have been involved in that too, because a lot of I know that's large in New England, especially of
Yep.
Cape Verdean and descendants and stuff. They work on the boats and stuff. I know that's that's also on Long Island. The Shinnecock Indians, they were people who worked on whalers. They worked on the boats and stuff like that too. So they had that maritime history by being by the water. And Stonington is you're right on the what do they call it, the Long Island Sound.
Long Island Sound. Yep.
Mm-hmm. I'm in Freeport, so I'm not far from you, but
My paraeducator in here, she has family who lives in Long Island, and she was like, "What part of Long Island does Chuck come from?" So Freeport.
Yep, Freeport. Yep, right on the South Shore.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about too was, we're so lucky in that we found, just by putting our context clues together, about Pero likely be like. I told the kids, I'm like, if I were to throw a percentage on it, I would say it's about 99% positive that Pero was born in Cape Verde because of the language that he spoke.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other information about the Cape Verdean?
I have nothing solid. That was just, I guess that was the person who originally gave me the information. I guess that was what they guesstimated. I have nothing solid saying that he was, I could go by my DNA and guess he was from the west coast of Africa, Senegal, along that area, and Cape Verde is off the coast of Senegal.
And we were also, even before I had met you, we also were under the impression that Cape Verde was the more specific place. We know West Africa is obviously the hot spots of that continent where our enslaved people are typically coming from. But the reason why they believed primarily Cape Verde was because the Portuguese colonized Cape Verde. And we have documents that show Pero's name as Pedro, which obviously would be
Portuguese.
Yep. Yep. And we have documents here that show him with the name Peter.
Okay.
So if you kind of connect those dots
Well,
together.
interestingly, Portuguese shows in my DNA. So
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're thinking.
hmm
And my other question to you is, would you agree with the guesstimation that we made that Pero would have been about 10 years old ish
yes. hmm
when
He
he
was
would have been
what I
born?
read. He was a small boy when he was first brought to America.
But if we're thinking about the language component, he would have had to have had an established vocabulary for that to keep with him
hmm
for the rest of his life with those fractured pieces of English in there.
And I also read something that said he spoke, like a form of patois. He spoke, in broken, what they call broken English patois. That he spoke
Broken,
in a
yeah,
dialect, or pidgin English, they call it now in Africa.
Pigeon English. Thank you.
hmm
I've been trying to find using AI and other sources, what that would sound like. And the best thing that I can try to use to explain to my kiddos what that kind of patois sounds like, the Jamaican language.
hmm
But even like I'm thinking the Cajun of
hmm
Louisiana, where you've got the
The
French and the
mixture,
English kind
the
of mashed up
uh-huh.
together.
hmm
All right, but I'm going to look up that Pidgin English and see what
And
I can
pigeon is
find. So
spelled
that will
Pidgin is how they spell it.
GIN. Got
hmm
it. So I spelled it like the birds.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But if
All
you look
right.
at it, I think they might even print the BBC in pidgin English for Nigerians.
Stop it.
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
All right. So I wanted to ask my kiddos now, after hearing from Chuck and just all the research that you've been doing, while we've got him here before we have to go, do you have any questions that you feel are still unanswered, or just anything that you wanted to say or ask? He's not looking at you, he's looking at me, so you don't have to be shy. You can tell me, and then I will transfer to him. They're being shy.
So they can
This was
speak
my
up.
class.
They can speak up.
This was my class that I had told them, in the beginning, that I said, you know what, I'm going out on a limb. What's the worst? This man can tell me that I'm a fool for
hmm
reaching out to him, but
hmm Nah.
I'm just going to email him and I'm going to see, what he thinks.
Uh-huh.
And as we kept corresponding, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, do you mind if I
Uh-huh.
chat with you? And so that's when they said, they're like, could we be the person or the
The
class
class
that
to do it.
uses Chuck in our
What?
video?
Okay.
And so yeah, that you will be in their video, which will
Very
be
good.
unique from the other three
Okay.
videos.
What period is this of your class of your
This is
school
my
day?
D block class.
Okay.
Yep, my D block class. So all of my classes are doing it,
Okay.
but we're trying to make it, because we have two teams for the 8th grade. So we have a blue team and a gold team. And the other social studies teacher, Mr. Agins, they also are doing Paro.
Okay.
But it gets to a point sometimes with the videos that, because the information doesn't change,
Mm-hmm.
they get a little monotonous.
Okay.
So, that was kind of one of my goals this year, because this is only our second year doing the video,
Uh-huh.
was to try to make each of my 4 classes different than the other
Others.
3.
Okay.
And what's going to make my D blocks class different is the inclusion of youth.
Okay. Very good.
So, so that's what I wanted to just let you know, is that this is going to be the group that you're going to be featured in.
Okay. And I want to tell you, I mentioned to you earlier that Piero and Phyllis's daughter Fanny, her tombstone is in Stonington with her husband. Her husband's name was Peter Dorrell, who was my 4th great grandfather. And their tombstones are in Stonington. I have a picture of both of them. I've been saying for like 3 years that I need to take a ride up there because I wanted, to go see it. And I have pictures of it, so that I know they exist.
So on that note, and I know that it's a drive for sure, but we've got ferries everywhere.
Yeah, we have a ferry not far from us out in Port Jefferson that goes across.
Yep. So if, I know it's the holiday season and it can be chaotic and life happens, but if you are available on December 17th, we would love to have you join us
Okay.
if you're able to. We're doing the way that this project is working is we're making the videos, and we have a local theater actually in the next town over called Westerly, Rhode Island.
Okay.
The manager of that theater is actually a former student of mine and Mr. Agan's. So
Okay.
for the past 2 years, he's been incredibly generous about making sure that we can get the theater and the gallery area. So we are doing a daytime viewing. It would be a morning daytime viewing.
Okay.
I believe we're starting the videos at 10:45ish or so, which might be too early for you. But also too, the upside would be if you wanted to take the rest of the day and venture around Stonington, you certainly could. Or if it would be better, if you're still able to, we're doing 3 viewings at the United for a community event in the evening. So that way our kids can have their families come and show them what we've been working on for, for so long.
Okay.
And those will begin at 5 o'clock at the United Theater.
Okay.
So it's something to consider, and you certainly don't have to answer today, but just, let me know over the course of the next couple of days, and we'll make sure that we reserve tickets for you and any family members.
Okay.
If you'd like. And,
I have some cousins that might be interested, so I'll bring it up to them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it would also be worthwhile too. I would love to connect you with our historical society librarian, because that wealth of knowledge in that young woman's head is she is a treasure trove.
Okay.
And there's probably things that she knows that I just haven't thought to ask her that you could pick her brain a little bit.
Okay, very good.
But so yeah, just let me know. But I'm going to ask you one more time, group, any questions that any of you have? They're still being shy.
Tell them all to build their own family trees. Do that for me and for themselves.
Yeah, no,
that helps. Really that helps people who do genealogy.
It absolutely does, and that's the thing. Like sometimes we learned last year with Mint, their family tree, if you will, was in a family Bible. It was just they recorded their children's names and birth dates in that Bible, and the Historical Society still has and actually brought into us that actual Bible, so we could have seen that.
Okay, very good.
So sometimes we find, those types of documents in just very obscure places.
Yeah, people stick it in a book or something. Yeah,
exactly. So you never know where you might end up finding and a lot of family Bibles do have family trees like
in it.
Section in them. So, but yeah. So thank you, Chuck.
Thank you very much.
I've been so excited for this morning, and I'm like, I told all my administrators today and yesterday, I'm like, guess what I'm doing today?
I'll tell it.
But
thank you. Thank you for your interest, and thank you.
Well, we hope we do right by you and all of their descendants. That's our, that's always our wish and want. So
very good.
Yeah. So if nothing more, if you're not able to attend any of the screenings, we will make sure that we send you a copy of all the videos, so that way you can see what each class pieced together. Okay. So I'll let you know in a few days. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you very much, and tell your class peace and love. Have a Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye. I can't read this call.